This video is going to cover what to talk about with a girl you're texting. By the way, my name's Blaine, I'm a dating coach for men, and welcome to my channel. Specifically, we are going to look at 10 key conversation topics that you can initiate via text. Before we dive into the actual text and examples, I want to cover 3 important things that you should know about texting. First, texting is a means to an end. You want to land dates and build relationships with women in real life, not find a pen pal who you are going to message with endlessly. With this in mind, it is also helpful to have a destination in mind so you can steer the conversation that way. For example, you want to eventually ask her on a date, or you want to ascertain a specific piece of information. Second, less is more. It is a lot easier to text the wrong thing or text too much and come off as needy than it is to build a romantic connection via text. So when in doubt, text less and steer the conversation towards chatting and meeting in person. And third, texting is a two-way street. This is to say, texting should feel like a balanced conversation, not an interrogation or an interview. You can absolutely ask a question to stir conversation, but just be prepared to answer that question as well. And if you notice you're the one doing all of the asking, this might be a sign that she's not interested in texting you and it's best to cut bait. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get into what to talk about with the woman you're texting. Swap stories about your day. This is an easy and effective way to break the ice with a girl, particularly because it works regardless of your relationship with her, and it can pave the way for deeper conversations. But instead of texting something generic and open-ended like, "Hey, how was your day?" which can lead to a conversational dead end, try texting something that is going to make her smile and can also lead to other avenues of conversation. For example, "Hey there, what was the highlight and lowlight of your day?" Alternatively, share something about your day when you ask about hers to set the emotional tone and direction of conversation. For example, "Hey, how's your day been so far? A highlight of mine was making it to yoga before work. I have felt so refreshed and energized all day. How about you?" Ask what she's been up to lately. This is an especially good strategy for a text conversation if you haven't spoken with her in a couple weeks or even a couple months. The most generic text you could send in this situation would be, "Hey, it's been a minute since we last spoke. What have you been up to lately?" That message is pretty bland though, and often leads conversations off a cliff because it is so open-ended. Plus, it fails to address the reason that you haven't spoken in weeks. It tends to be better to name why you haven't chatted and ask a more specific question. So let's say you matched with a girl and then she went on a trip to Hawaii, and that was a few weeks ago. You might text her something like, "Hey, how was Hawaii? Tell me about some of the highlights." Or maybe you exchanged numbers with a girl at a party and you chatted about how she recently got a puppy, but then work got crazy for both of you, so the conversation went dark. "Hey, I didn't mean to let this conversation fall off after we met at Dave's. Work has been comically busy for the last 2 weeks, but I'm finally through it. What's new? Has the puppy been behaving himself?" Discover her interests and hobbies. Discovering a girl's interests and hobbies is an essential way to understand how she spends her time and if you two may be compatible. If you just met her, you might be inclined to ask an open-ended question like, "Pick up any new hobbies recently?" But you're usually better off asking something more direct that you already know she has an interest in. For example, "You mentioned you like to swim. Have you ever been to Barton Creek?" Or, "You mentioned you love to swim. Did you swim competitively growing up?" These questions will obviously help you get to know a girl, but understanding her specific interests and hobbies can also help you lay the foundation for a date. For example, maybe you play pickleball and you want to sniff out whether or not she would be interested in playing with you this weekend. You could text, "Have you ever played pickleball? I recently picked it up and I've been having so much fun." Or maybe you've been on a couple dates and you're thinking about planning a hiking date next. You could text her something like, "On a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 equals I don't even like backyards and 10 equals I could live in a tent in Yosemite, how into the outdoors are you?" Explore your favorite things to consume. When I say consume, I mean anything from books, TV shows, movies, artists, music, songs, food, things that you can discuss to create a deeper connection, illuminate your passions and preferences, and have a fun conversation about. You can literally start a conversation by asking, what's your favorite song, musician, show, or podcast right now? Obviously, just pick one of those things, don't ask for all of them. Assuming you have had friendly rapport back and forth previously, the question won't feel too random. You can also start a conversation by sharing a show or podcast or book that you really like. For example, have you been watching season 2 of White Lotus? I'm halfway through and I'm obsessed. Or if you're mid-conversation and she shares something going on in her life, like she just moved to the east side of your town, you can show your interests and better understand hers by texting something like, I love the east side. Do you have any favorite restaurants yet? Ask her for advice. This is a great conversation topic via text because it signals that you value her opinion, which can feel like a compliment. To riff on the example we just covered, you could text something like, have a suggestion for a restaurant on East 6th? I'm meeting a colleague for a drink later and would love a good food rack. Or, looks like I'll be stuck in traffic for an hour this afternoon. What's the best podcast you've been listening to lately? Just know that asking a girl for advice works best when it's on a topic that she's interested in or has good judgment on. Like you want a tip for the best running shoes and she's a marathon runner. And soliciting advice doesn't make you look silly or incompetent, but if you are just getting to know each other, it's gonna feel weird if you're asking her for something more serious like career advice. Basically, just be thoughtful about the message you send by asking her for advice or her opinion. Pay her a compliment. As long as it is genuine, paying a compliment is a wonderful way to enhance or even start a conversation. To riff on the example we covered a moment ago, if you asked a girl for a podcast recommendation and she said Kim Kardashian's new podcast, The System, and you listened to it, you could then text her, wow, amazing rec. The System was so good. It's making me look at our criminal justice system and Kim Kardashian in a whole new light. Or if you already know she feels affectionate towards you, you could open up the conversation by sending some affection back. Like, random props for being amazing. I can't get over how smart, caring, or supportive you are, and I'm having a blast getting to know you. Or perhaps you send something a little spicier like, I just wanted to say you looked really good last night. Just remember not to go overboard. Compliments mean a lot coming from a guy she likes, but can come off as creepy if she barely knows you. Discuss future plans, goals, and ambitions. This can be helpful to better understand if you are on similar paths, if you support each other's growth, and simply to get to know each other better. For example, you could text something light and conversational like, excited for any travel plans you have coming up? Or similar to a conversation about her favorite things to consume, you could ask about bucket list items. Like, what's something you're trying to accomplish this week or month or year? Or maybe you ask a more meta question like, it sounds like you're super passionate about your job. Do you think you'll stay with your company or eventually branch off and do your own thing? The only caveat here is that deep conversations about the future, especially if your future might be together, the better they are to have in person. Learn about her background. If you're texting with a girl, another great ground for conversation can be about your pasts, like where you grew up, where you've traveled, what you studied, that sort of thing. As we've touched on already, very open-ended questions tend not to translate via text because they can be cumbersome to talk about while you're typing and because they can take away from conversations that would be better had in person on dates. So rather than texting something like, so tell me about your background, it is always better to ask more pointed contextual questions. Like, you've mentioned so many places you've been. That's awesome. What led to so much travel? Or maybe you're just starting to chat and she mentioned that she moved during the pandemic. You might text something like, I moved during the pandemic too. Where did you move from? Or maybe she mentioned something about where she went to college. You might expand the conversation by saying, wow, Cornell is a great school. What did you study there? Talk about current events. If a major piece of news just dropped, or you know you're both interested in a story that's developing around the world, this can also be a great conversation topic to text about. For example, maybe you read in the news that there are fires in Northern California, and she previously mentioned that her mom lives in California wine country. You might open a conversation by saying, Hey, I saw in the news that there were fires in Sonoma County, and I recall that your mom lives in wine country. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing and if your mom's all right. Or maybe she has an interest in education and law. And you text, I saw that the Supreme Court made a decision on affirmative action. I know it's a topic that you're passionate about. How are you feeling? Those were obviously heavier examples, but there are also tons of breezier opportunities to discuss current events. Like, whoa, have you heard of the local jazz festival happening Saturday? It sounds like there's gonna be lots of great food and live music. Check it out. And then you send the link. The key here is choosing topics that are relevant to her and also that you are comfortable discussing. And it's even better if she hasn't already heard about it someplace else. Basically, you don't want to seem like you're just sending her random news headlines because she's interested in current events. She probably gets her news from a trusted source already. Make plans to see each other. This is the single most important thing that you could text about because, as I mentioned in the beginning, texting is a means to an end. You are looking to build a relationship in real life, not just develop a pen pal. It often makes sense to just ask her out directly. For example, what are you up to Thursday? Do you want to grab dinner with me at this awesome Cuban spot downtown? But it's even smoother if you can hatch plans contextually based on the conversation you've been having. Like you send her the link to the jazz festival and she agrees it sounds really cool. You might text her, let's check it out together. If you're free Saturday afternoon, I'll grab tickets. So that's it. Those are the 10 conversational topics that you can use via text. If you found that helpful, check out my other videos. Consider signing up for my Texting OS course, which I will link below. And most importantly, tap that subscribe button so you are the first to know when I upload new videos weekly. Happy texting! Trying to do more open hand signals.